Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Jeremy Sandell is a highly accomplished tech entrepreneur, sales professional and personal development trainer. With over 10 years experience and over $15 million in one-on-one sales, he has revolutionized the lives of countless individuals through his mentorship and coaching, whilst becoming a top 1% earner in the online business space. Notably, he's worked with influential personal brands like Lopez and Jerome, Maldonado, and has an unwavering passion for personal development and a relentless pursuit of changing lives. He continues to inspire and motivate others to break free from the confines of his past and embrace a brighter future. Jeremy believes that true success lies not only in financial achievements, but in revolutionizing lives and empowering individuals to unleash their full potential. So very fittingly, we dive into this topic today of personal development. So welcome to the Politics of Everything, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since day one of the Politics of Everything, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one solution to make the process quick and painless, the way it should be for those of us who just love great content and want to get our ideas out into the world. If you know me, I'm obsessed with quality in terms of my guests, my sound, and everything about my show has to be great the first time. I'm time poor. It's so easy to use Zencastr. I'm not tech savvy and you don't need to be either. There's nothing to download. Just click on the link and off we go. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-productions now in their toolkit, you don't have to leave your browser to get that episode done, and done fast. I have a special offer for you, and hopefully you can experience what I have with Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my VIP code, the Politics of Everything, all lowercase in one word, to get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. How good is that? I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Yeah, it's great. And yes, we just were chatting that you are in Australia a bit, but obviously from your accent, we can tell that you're based in the US. But as a kid, I just want to ask you, what did you think you might want to do? Did you have any sort of, skills or techniques or ideas that you might think, oh, I was going to be an astronaut or I might want to be in finance? Like, what did you think you might do when you were a lot younger?
This is always a funny question because I think I'm one of the very few people who kind of ended up doing what they wanted to do.
Oh, that's amazing. That is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's right. I reckon 50-50. You got 50% of people who thought they'd be a teacher and end up being, a tech founder or something like that. But generally people can join the dots and sort of go, yeah, I could see early on, this is my natural aptitude and these are the things that lit me up. And that's why I do what I do.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I started when I was say like about 6 or 7, I learned how to play guitar, and I was like instantly hooked because it was something that I could do without anybody else. And I realized like every time I played, I was like, I saw how I could get better. And so when I was a little kid, I was like, I'm going to be a rock star, And
as you do.
yeah, and now, I wouldn't call myself like a rock star, but like it's interesting because my goal was like I wanted to change the way people felt. Like I had a lot of violence and a lot of drug use and stuff around me when I was a little kid, and so I thought if I could play music that could inspire people, that can make people feel better, that they would want, like it would make their lives better the way music had made my life better. And so it was really interesting when I got into personal development because it's like the same thing. Like the first time I heard a motivational speaker, a man named Jim Rohn, I was like, wow, this is like what I wanted to do with music, but he's just really smart and he's like teaching people how to take charge of their lives and then go out and you can make more money, you can become more, you can live a better life. And So it's very interesting as an adult because I feel like I ended up doing the same thing, even if it's not the same career, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that's excellent. Do you still play the guitar?
I have not played very much with traveling so much. It's really hard to like
It's
keep one with
hard.
you.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Absolutely. Oh, that's interesting. So, how do you define or view this notion of personal development? Is there a couple of examples which you think can maybe bring this to life for everyone listening?
Yeah, I mean, I just see it really as this pursuit of I think it's the one place where it's okay to be really selfish because the more selfish you are about your personal development, the easier it is to be really selfless for other people and to really actually do something that makes people's lives around you better. I think a lot of times it's very easy to get confused and think like self-sacrificing, like there's a lot of single mothers, and I have experience with this in my own family. Like, there's a lot of single mothers that basically like they give up all of their dreams and hopes and goals, and say, "Well, I've got all these kids to take care of. I can't be reckless. I can't be pursuing all of these things." And to a certain extent, they give up on themselves and they kind of sacrifice themselves. And I think it's very hard because it sounds a little judgmental the way I'm saying this. It's very hard to even be judgmental because it's like at a certain point when you're in certain situations, it is very hard to try to figure out how can you continue to grow as a human being and still put food in your kids' mouths. And
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. No, I think that's a really important point that it's not just one view of the world. It's got to happen in duality, I imagine. You got this stuff you got to do, but then there's yourself and your own development.
yes, and I think that with personal development, it's like the more selfish you are, where you're like, even if you have kids, like I have a 12-year-old son, and it's like I teach him to be a little bit selfish. I'm like, hey, look, like every day you don't have time for me and I don't have time for you. We both need to be reading our books. We have to learn stuff. And then I want you to tell me the cool stuff that you learned, and I'll tell you the cool stuff that I learned. And I think, it's especially challenging when you get very busy because if you become more successful, the kind of tendency is to think, well, I've already made it this far. I'm sure I'll just keep getting more success because I've been so successful so far. And
Mm.
uh and that's like I think the major challenge with personal development is how do you keep that progress going when you start to get all the things that everyone tells you is success? Because at a certain point, you'll make more money if you're really driven. You'll make more money than anyone in your family has ever made. You'll have cooler stuff than they've ever had. Like I travel all over the world. Like there's people in my family that have never been outside the state that they live in. So like at a certain point, if your compass is not correct, it's very easy to just kind of say, okay, well, this is, I guess, good enough, and not ever really get past that or really know. And that like curiosity is something that I think is more important in the personal development space that doesn't really get a lot of credit because the more curious you are, the more curious your life is.
Absolutely. You focus on one to one sales and being a top 1% online business earner, which we talked about in our introduction, at the same
hmm
time empowering individuals to unleash this full potential through what we've just been discussing personal development. Are they interlinked naturally? Like you've just mentioned things like being driven, for example. Is that something that's part of that overall picture of success, perhaps? And how do you kind of marry those things together when you're working with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think being driven is something that you can decide to do whenever you want. I don't actually think it's like I think if you look at the actual research, there's a good percentage of like ambitiousness. Um, and this correlates sometimes too to testosterone, which is very interesting, but there's a certain level of ambitiousness that is genetic. There's always going to be some people that no matter what, they want more all the time. But
Yeah.
I think for the majority of people, whether or not they're making a lot of money or they're living a really cool life or like doing any of these things that they want to do, I don't think the driven part is actually as important as it is that they're thinking through what they actually want and getting really clear on like why. And I think like I never hear anybody talk about dying, and I understand why. It's not an exciting thing. Nobody's like, I can't wait. Well, there's some people
Yeah.
who are like, I can't wait till I die, but like they're not really enjoying life when they're thinking that. But the majority of people don't really want to think about it because it's a lot more pleasant to just live in the moment and just be free and just live your life. And I think when you really consider like you might only have one chance, and you just kind of figure out like what's one thing that I feel like if I really put my energy into it, even if I failed for the rest of my life, first of all, I'd end my life with a really cool story that'd be worth writing a book about. And then secondly, I would earn the respect of like the people that really matter to me, like my kids and my spouse and my really close friends. Because if you can really do those two things, like I remember when I first started as an entrepreneur going to conferences, I would be like a little embarrassed because I was eating like hot dogs and top ramen all weekend, like the little packs that are like 30 cents because I didn't have any money. But now it's like when I tell people that, they're like, wow, it's so crazy. Like you're so successful and you've done all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to live a cool life. And I figured I'm okay with eating hot dogs and top ramen if it means I get to meet interesting people and learn interesting things. And eventually I've got this story that I can use that's going to inspire people to say, hey, you know what? I don't have everything figured out and I don't have everything, but I have myself and I can start with at least an idea and try and figure it out.
Absolutely. And I imagine there's been setbacks along the way. It's not like the success
Oh,
trajectory is
yeah.
always straight up, right? Like, this is the thing. When you look back and people see where you're at now, Jeremy, they'd be like, oh, that all worked out for you and your ambition, paid off. But there must have been times there were setbacks, for example.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like so my first business, like my first real business, I used to sell gym memberships and I went to this gym one day and I remember walking in and I stopped and I don't know what it was, but I stopped and I looked around and I was like, who the hell owns this place? Like it was like a really strange realization that I was like, I'm working in this building every single day, producing revenue for people I've never even met before. I don't even know the name of the person that owns this business. This guy's probably somewhere chilling in a pool. Like he's like really making money. And this specific gym franchise in America, they have something like 200 or 300 locations. So they're a very big franchise. And it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, okay, I don't want to be the guy that I am. I want to be the guy that owns the business. And my first business, I remember I worked really hard. Like I would go to my office at 7:30 in the morning and I wouldn't leave my office most days until between 8:30 and 9:30 at night. And I literally just picked up the phone and just dialed all day. I mean, there were days where I was making 300 phone calls because nobody would answer the phone. So I'd just keep dialing and dialing and dialing. And I remember I was making like $100,000 a year. And I was for sure like I was like I am the shit. Like I am making so much money.
Well, it depends where
And
you start from, right? Like, if you've kind of come from eating ramen from a packet and maybe not knowing what your career is going to look like, that would definitely feel like
yes.
success.
Well, before that, I think the best year I'd ever had was like $22,000 or something. So I'd
Yeah.
5x'd my income. But I didn't realize how much of business sometimes can fall outside of your control. And I was in the insurance industry. There's a really big unaccounted for disaster. They have to change the way that they rate people, and that'll increase people's bills. And I
Yeah.
didn't really understand what that meant for me as an agency owner. And I lost three-quarters of my business in the span of 4 or 5 days. So at the end of that month, when I should have been getting a check for my new commissions that I had earned in the agency, the company actually sent me a bill, and they're like,
Oh my
"You actually had
goodness.
negative commissions from all these cancellations." And I had like the my dream car, which is not like super fancy, it's like a Cadillac, So I had this car with like a bill I should not have ever had. And so my car got repossessed. I ended up having to move in with a friend. I broke up with my girlfriend at the same time because I realized I was very ambitious and like we rubbed each other the wrong way in a lot of ways. We should have broken up way, way before that. But like to your point, I thought I was like the king of the world. And within the span of maybe 2 weeks, it was like I literally was like at ground zero. And I was like, wow, I did all this work. I traveled 2 states away from where I was living before. I opened this business. I lost my car. And I was like, I got to do something else. Like I need to be in a situation where I have more control.
I was going to say, it sounds like it's, yeah, you're not really driving the train, are you? Or if you're like working for someone else, that's always what my thing has been about starting my business as well. So when you work with your clients, how do you kind of, without giving away all your secrets, but like what's sort of, I
Hmm.
guess, the best ways you can unleash their potential? Because for everyone, that's going to look different. You know what? Like you mentioned, $100,000 for you at that time was a really good income compared to what you had previously made. For other people, it may not just be about the dollars. It may be about market share. It could be about, I don't know, saving the planet from climate change. It could be various things. So how do you tap into that so you can really make sure that they're doing what they're meant to be doing with their lives?
Yeah, I think, and that's a really good question, by the way. I think what I'm going to say is going to sound significantly simpler because I've already been like doing this and I've worked in a lot of different kinds of businesses for 12 years. So it's been like I've been really blessed that I've been doing like 100 or 200 calls a day for so long because over all of those conversations, I've gotten to learn and hear so many different things. So what I'm gonna say will sound a little simpler than it actually is in like real time, but a lot of times it's first of all identifying is the problem a business mechanics problem or is the problem a mindset issue?
Mm,
And and
that's
sometimes
interesting.
with business owners, there's a lot of good studies on this, and there's different kinds of personalities that are more likely to be drawn to entrepreneurialism. There, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hexaco test.
I
It's
have heard of it, yes.
HEXACO.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the measures on this test is openness to experience or new experiences. And entrepreneurs tend to rate higher on that than the rest of the population, but you also have a higher percentage of people high in psychopathy in entrepreneurship because they can tend to be detached. Like, as an example, if you're in a big company, you have to lay off half of your employees. It's a lot easier to do that if you're lower in empathy than somebody who's like an HR person that's really high in empathy. And so when I'm talking to people, and this is why I said this might sound simpler, just figuring out like, is it the mindset or is it a business mechanics thing? I'm trying to figure out like, okay, is this person really high in empathy and they're like avoiding making decisions because they don't want to have to make hard decisions? Or is it more that they actually, on the other side, it might be they don't care enough and they can't keep the right people in the business or they can't scale past a certain point because the ability to fulfill in a way that's really attractive isn't there because people who are high in psychopathy are driven by short-term decision making. It's like, how do I make $10 today even if it costs me $20 in a week?
Mm.
And so obviously, as much as possible, I try to avoid working with people high in psychopathy.
Yeah.
But
I
like,
mean, how do you know though? I guess you've worked it out pretty quickly because you've done this for a long time.
it's interesting. Like, there's two ways to kind of tell. People who are really high in psychopathy, either you can instantly tell that they actually don't give a damn about people, or they're extremely charming and they want to try to get you to think that they really care about you, even if there isn't like a logical reason for them to care that much. So, and that's one of the challenges. I know we're getting a little off topic, but one of the challenges in dealing with psychopaths is a great book called Snakes in Suits.
Yep. What a
They did the
fabulous title.
largest, yeah, they did basically the largest studies on psychopathy in corporate culture. And what they found was one of the problems with people who are high in psychopathy is they tend to actually be very charming people. And that's where the title came from, Snakes in Suits. They have to kind of look and act like they're one way while kind of doing something else. So that's like how I avoid that. But really, it's like if it's a business mechanics issue when I'm talking to somebody, there's basically 12 divisions in any business. A lot of times there's three that generate revenue directly. You can usually fix something in one of those three and it'll increase the revenue. And then if the problem's like a fulfillment issue or customer support, those are pretty easy to fix. Like if your problem's customer support, it's like find somebody who really gives a damn and make their full-time job to make it an amazing experience. But if it's a mindset thing, which I think is probably way more helpful for your listeners, it's the thing about mindset is you have to figure out first of all who you are and you have to be willing to be okay with what actually motivates you rather than trying to make the politically correct things that everybody says should motivate you the things that you try to motivate yourself with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important. I
It's
think it's tapping into what's your thing, right? Because you can read all the books and follow all the entrepreneurs and all of that stuff, but if it doesn't resonate with you, you're not going to get to where you want to get to.
yes, yes. And
Yes.
like I've found like I work with mostly people who are making between I would say between 1 and $10 million is like 50% of the people I work with, and the other 50% are between 10 and 100 million. And there's a couple guys that are like 200 to half a billion in revenue a year. And the one really interesting I find with them is if I ask them, like one of these guys, he's making about $2 million a year. He nets one and a half. Like his margins are insane. There's
Right. Yeah.
80%
But
margins,
that's the thing.
basically.
There's what's the saying? I don't know if it's the same in the States. My business coach said, sales are for vanity and profit is for sanity. It's that thing of
Oh, that's
like,
good.
yeah, you can steal that if you like.
I do like that. That's very good. I have a quote book that is going in there. But I asked him. He's like, oh, I got really serious about the gym, and I was like, well, what's your goal? And he said, honestly, I want to make my ex-wife wish she had never left me, that she, like, I want her to regret it for the rest of her life. And, I thought it was interesting because it wasn't the first time I had heard something like that from a very successful person that I was like, this emotion that this guy felt, like, he felt so bad when he got divorced that it like literally shifted the way he viewed exercise. And every time he goes to the exercise like at the gym, he's getting this like satisfaction out of knowing that he's better without her, and that like it's not something people like to talk about because it feels like even talking about this other person's motivation, I feel a little strange. I'm like, this is kind of
Yeah, it's
not
quite
like
deeply personal too. Like,
it's
and without judgment on, people go, "Oh, it's just about revenge. It's not really about him. It's about someone else." And there's people that would find that challenging to think about it in that way.
yes. And when I talk about like what really motivates you, the thing that I think people think is they think, okay, if I'm motivated by revenge and I do something good, then I'm a bad person because of my motivation. It's like, well, no, what is the actual outcome and what are you doing? And so like for him, he's been training really hard for like 12 months. He looks fantastic and he feels good. And he said, I only ever think about my ex-wife when somebody asks me why I work out. He's like, now at this point, I just really enjoy it. Like I look in the mirror, I like to see my arms are getting bigger. I know women look at me. And like when I got into entrepreneurship, a big motivation for me was like, I don't want to be like some of the people that I grew up around that like like I went through a lot of very, very violent physical abuse. Like the kind of stuff that I went through is not stuff that like people usually make it through adulthood from. Like I grew up
Right.
in group homes and foster care, and the
Yeah.
statistics around kids who go into those things are like terrible. I mean, like 80% of children who go into the group home system in America will be homeless and on drugs within 2 years of leaving that system. So it creates almost like prisons. It creates kind of it doesn't create healthy adults. It's just not a functioning system.
Yes.
And a lot of the motivation for me early on, I was like, one day I'm going to look back and I'm just going to think about, wow, like all of these all of these bastards, all of these people who tried to keep me down, who tried to basically show me like, oh, you're nothing, you're just a like fat little kid. Like now that I'm an adult, I'm like, what are these people? What is any of this? And the interesting thing is, on a daily basis, I'm like really content and like fulfilled. But it's like if I ever start to dip in my motivation, it's almost like I can go back there and be like, you know what? To hell with these. And this is like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
like,
No, these things have a
but
great impact. From whatever happens in your early life has a huge impact. Obviously, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get it. That totally makes sense. So, are there some tried and true ways that we can work on ourselves inside and outside our business? And I guess we've touched on some of them with things like exercise and mindset. But also, I guess there's two things at play here. Like we talk about those external markers, like how big your house is and how many toys you have and, your bottom line. But there's also that inner satisfaction. And I'm a little bit older than you. And I think I look at success very differently to what I would have in my 20s and 30s. Like it's got to be more than just those external recognition. Like it's lovely to win awards, but you speak to anyone, and we have touched a little bit on death in this conversation, but no one on their deathbed says, I wish I spent more time in the office or I'd won that award. It's never about that. It's always about relationships and people and other things, which how do you make sure that those things are all aligned and we're not just looking at one version of success, I guess?
yeah, when I was in insurance and I was struggling to keep that business going because I was like, I didn't want to fail, and I thought maybe if I just worked hard enough, I could catch back up. But I realized I was very unhappy. I was like, I really don't actually like being in an office all day. I really don't like what I'm doing. And the thing that really helped me, and I think this should be just mandatory in school, is I basically found every proven psychological personality test that you can take. So, like the Hexaco, the Dark Triad, I took the Levinson self reporting psychopathy measure, I took Carl Jung's like 16 personalities. Like, I literally just took all of those and I actually recorded the results from those tests. And then I did the same thing with career aptitude tests. And the interesting thing was this process, and nobody told me to do this. I was just like, I don't know who the hell I am. Like, all I know is I don't want to be broke and I want to be my own boss. Like, I want to live a cool life. I want to do something interesting. Like, I want this to matter.
Yeah, that's
And
important, I think. Not just how you make your money, but why you make your money.
yeah, exactly. And so, like, that process of doing those tests and then recording and then looking and saying, well, you know what? These like two or three things keep coming up. It gave me clarity that basically, and I think everybody should do this if they haven't figured it out. First, figure out like who you are and your personality style and the things that you like and don't like, and try to find a way that you can make a daily habit out of thinking about yourself in that way where you're like, why did I get in this argument yesterday? Why did I do this? It's very easy to just kind of fall into the lull of swiping on your phone on Instagram, or if you're single, swiping on Tinder, or like doing these things. And I think there's a lot to be said for the kind of creativity that comes out of sometimes just sitting and staring out a window and just letting your mind more or less. I
Yeah.
have something I do called a mind melt before I go to sleep. I literally just like lay in bed and I just let my thoughts just wander all over the place. And I've done this during the daytime too. And I find that it's really, you come up with very interesting things, and it makes you, I find it makes me feel really good about myself because I'm like, wow, I've got like all these interesting ideas in my head, and it'd be cool to talk to people about this and see like if we could make this thing or come up with this thing or do that.
Absolutely. No, I love that. Thanks for the sharing that, I guess, that personal take on how you do these things. Changing tack a little bit, at the moment, what's your favorite business tool? And it obviously can't be your smartphone because everyone has those, but is there anything particularly that you're finding helpful? It could be an app, it could be a bit of tech, it could be anything. And how is it helping you in business or life?
Yeah, I think one of the best things I've ever done is to talk to ChatGPT for like 10 minutes about my life and ask
Really?
it.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that is an unexpected answer.
Have you done this before?
I've never done it. Obviously, like everyone, we've all dabbled with Chat GPT for work or writing a framework or,
Hmm.
seeing I work in PR. So like, writing a speech, it's like, oh, what's this like? Is it really going to get the right tone and stuff? But I've never done it personally, which is fascinating.
Yeah, so it's a cool thing. So basically, I because you can talk to ChatGPT, so I literally hit the microphone button and I said, I'm 33 years old. I do this for work. I work with these kinds of people. This is how I work out. These are the kinds of foods that I eat. And I mean, I'm really detail oriented. So like, I literally laid out like my meal plan, my exercise plan, I told it about how I sleep, and I told it about my social circle and how much time I spend with friends and family and how many books I read and my goals. And like, so I gave it this really long just overview of who I am, where I am in life. And then I asked it, I said, can you just give me 10 of 10 areas where I might be missing something? Maybe there's like something that a blind spot that I have that I should pay attention to. And ChatGPT isn't the best the first time you ask a question. So the first 10 things were okay. I drilled it down eventually that I was like, if I wanted, like, I feel like right now my life is basically a 7 out of 10. If I wanted to take it to a 10 out of 10 within the next 60 days, what are the three things that guaranteed, no matter what, if I did them, it would make the biggest difference based off of what you've already told me? And then ChatGPT gave me these three things. And it's very interesting because they weren't actually things that I would actually think to improve on. One of them was social things. It was like you should spend more time going to social events around activities that you like, whether that's, go do a yoga class or join a club or something like that. And I'm a kind of ambitious person. So like to me, if I was going to try to figure out on my own without ChatGPT, how am I going to improve my life? My thought would be like, I need to figure out how I'm going to make more money, travel to more places, do cooler experiments. Like I would never have thought like joining a club would
Yeah,
probably actually make a bigger difference than
totally.
those things.
Interesting. Oh, that's mind blowing. I'll have to do that. What's been your biggest life lesson to date and why? There's probably many, but is there one that really stands out for you?
Yeah, I've been very lucky to have mentors at different times in my life that were great examples of integrity. And I remember insurance. I learned so much because I think I worked harder there than I'd ever worked before. But I remember my district manager, he was so hard to get along with. And to be fair, like I was probably a pain in the ass because I showed up whenever I wanted to. Sometimes I would like leave the office and be gone for 4 hours, and then I'd
Right.
work late into the night. Like I was
You
like,
did it your
I own the
way.
business.
Yeah,
Exactly. I was like, I'm the boss.
fair enough.
But the thing that I remembered always having this sense, I was like, even though this guy's yelling at me all the time, one time he's like, I'll put you through this fucking wall. Like, I mean, he like sometimes would go off. I could walk out of his office after this guy yelled at me and still be like, you know what? If anything went wrong, he would be the first person to do something to help. And like, even when this guy's yelling at me, I'm realizing like, I'm like, this guy is upset because he knows something about me that I'm not living up to. He knows that I could do better than I am. And he can see how I'm basically just screwing around because now I get to be the boss. I do whatever I want. And that that's something that I've been very fortunate multiple times where I've had these mentors that their integrity level is like if they say they're going to do something, it happens, even if it means they don't get any sleep, even if it means they get a cold or a flu or something because they didn't get any sleep, even if it means it's highly inconvenient. Like that level of integrity is something that I'm very, very fortunate that I learned because there's been business deals where And we all have to deal with this sometimes where you're like in the middle of a deal and the stakes are high. You know, you're talking to somebody sometimes. I have calls with people sometimes about $100,000, $250,000 at a time where it's like you could lose the deal telling the truth. But it's like if you don't tell the truth and you get the deal, you might end up losing that and more down the road as a result. And so it's like having those mentors early on that had that high level of integrity has probably saved me at least a couple $1 million over the last 5 or 6 years just because it was instilled in me. Like, do what you say you're going to do, be truthful with people, and like have a standard you hold yourself to always.
Totally. No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. How do you define success for yourself?
You know, I said it earlier, but I think no matter what happens, if at the end of your life you look back and you're like, I could write a cool book about this that people would enjoy reading, and I don't feel like I'm looking back and I have a lot of regrets. I think that's a better measure of success than anything else I've been able to find. I know Earl Nightingale defines success the progressive realization of a worthy goal or a worthy ideal. And I think that's maybe the closest to that. But really just knowing that if I was looking back at the end of my life, I'd have something interesting to write about that I could be happy to be able to share with people and it would inspire them. That's more success for me than anything else.
And our final takeaway message for everyone on the politics of personal development.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. One, if you're scared to get started, I want you to know that there's definitely somebody significantly stupider than you that's already done it very successfully.
Oh, I like that.
Um, it's
it's a bit sort of tongue in cheek, but that's great. I think that's powerful.
I cannot tell you how many times I've met people that were making more money than me that I was like, that guy's not smarter, he's just braver. That's all it is.
Yeah, I love that advice for everyone. If you do want to connect further with Jeremy, of course, there's some details, including his website, on our show notes. It's been a great conversation. We went to lots of different areas, and I really do appreciate your time, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. It was good talking to you.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests. So if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.